Hi, I'm Mia Parrish, and today on Devils in the Details, I'm with Dean Christopher Boone, who is part of a really exciting project. ASU is launching a new lab to research environmental sustainability and keep the planet habitable for future generations. The Global Futures Lab has very lofty ambitions. President Michael Crow has called the Global Futures Laboratory a national lab, one dedicated to not to weapons or defense strategies, but actually solving problems to make the world better. That's a little lofty. Chris, could you tell me more about those really ambitious and lofty marching orders?
Global Futures Laboratory has a very ambitious goal. It's ambitious because the need is urgent, and that is, how do we make sure that the planet is habitable, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. And for that, we need to look after our ecosystems, we need to look after our social structures, our political systems, and build a planet where not only people can survive, but where they can thrive.
What would be your personal goals in this? You know, it's a big deal thing to be seeking to change the world for the better.
So the most important thing for me is that we train a new generation of leaders that are able to have the global mindset and the ability to go out and affect change. I mean, that's our number one priority, is making sure that we create a really rich learning environment where we train those future leaders. And we know that when they go off and graduate and take on new occupations, they do really extraordinary things. So that's one of them. But the second is that we do have this obligation that society entrusts in us to develop new kinds of knowledge, new technologies, new approaches, new policies. And what I would like to see is that, again, back to what we were talking about earlier, how can we convince a whole network of universities and institutions to work together towards those audacious goals? So what would I like to see? I'd like to see, for instance, the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide go down instead of going up. We've accepted it almost as inevitable that we're just going to have more greenhouse gas emissions. I'd like to say that ASU played a role in seeing that curve slowly start to bend down and start moving in the right direction. That's just one example of where we could point and say it wasn't, in this case, not just technology, but maybe it was policy, or it was economic priorities or principles, or it was behavior change. But ASU played a role in making sure that we would have a more survivable future.
What do you imagine your graduates will do? What sorts of jobs do you foresee them engaging in?
Well, let me just start by saying that when we created the School of Sustainability in 2006, we had some ideas of what we thought our students would do. They totally surprised us in an amazingly good way. So they ended up working in every possible sector. So I've told this story before, but for instance, in the early years, we had a number of students that ended up working in the fashion industry. And we're not teaching them fashion, but they ended up working in the fashion industry because the fashion industry was really interested in things around supply chain and sustainability, around working conditions and so forth. So I just continue to be amazed at how our students everywhere, really, at ASU, but within the school, and I now think within the college, they're going to go out and surprise us, I think, in extraordinary ways. They're going to end up working in all possible sectors across private, public, and nonprofit.
Somewhere out there, there's a researcher, a student, a faculty member that has a passion for this kind of work. What would be your message to them?
So my key message is that no matter what your stage of life or what your career stage is, there's always an opportunity to learn. So lifelong learning, I think, is the new reality. The idea that you be educated between 18, 20, and 22, and then you go off and do your job, I think that's a really arcane way of thinking about how we not only contribute to society, but ways that we grow professionally. So it doesn't matter if you're 25 or you're 65. I think there's an opportunity to continue learning and for you to continue to grow personally and professionally. And ASU has created an ecosystem for learning where it can be anything from taking a single course through continuing education, attending an executive education workshop on something that's specific to potentially your sector, or if it's doing an online degree or certificate, or if it's learning with other family members as they go through a new learning opportunity. So that the new flexibility of learning, I think, opens up a world of possibilities.
Interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary is pretty exciting. So you can sort of see the interconnectedness. What do you think is the biggest challenge the university will face in launching this new lab?
Well, because it's new, and whenever things are new, you get two reactions. One is skepticism. The second is excitement. And it's just as long as the excitement is greater than the skepticism, then I think the future looks pretty good. And I'm speaking from experience because when we started the School of Sustainability, many people raised their eyebrows and said, "What are you doing? That's crazy. Your students will never get jobs. It's a buzzword. It'll be gone in 3 years." So you have to believe in it. And I think we've got a tremendous amount of commitment from faculty, staff, students, and certainly leadership. And you have to be able to demonstrate the value of what you're doing over and over and over again. So just based on our own experience of what we've done here at ASU over the last 15 years, I think that once again, we're going out and we're really pushing the boundaries, but I think we're going to find that there'll be like-minded institutions around the world that are going to start doing the same thing. The mission and vision and strategy for the college is something that I've been talking about with our faculty, staff, and students in a series of town halls, and the mission and vision is foundational. And the message that I've conveyed to everyone is that we need to start with the ASU charter as the foundation of who we want to be, right? So this is foundational. Now, once we have embraced that, and I think we all have now, the ASU charter, then we can start to think through what's our vision. So where do we want to be in 10 years? What do we want to be able to proclaim to the world? And then our mission is our core purpose. So what is it that we are doing on a day-to-day basis that's going to help us achieve that vision? And then based on that, how do we develop a strategy? Now, this all ties in with the Global Futures Laboratory. The lab and the college both share the notion and idea that we need to develop strategies to help us develop and create a system or a number of systems that allow people, again, to not just to survive, to thrive, to have meaningful lives, to do so that in ways that are just and fair, and then look after the ecosystems on which we all depend. Again, that's a big vision. That's an audacious mission, but I think these are the kinds of things that get people out of bed in the morning, and that's what we're trying to do.
What does success look like 10 years down the road? And I won't hold you to this because, like you said, there's a lot of unknown, but 10 years down the road, the lab is a success if what?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the lab and the college again because it's really hard to separate the two. But within the college, we'll have 5,000 students that we'll be training every year, and again, unleashing them unto the world to do amazing and extraordinary things. We'll be one of the largest research centers on campus, so we'll be competitive in the marketplace for cutting edge research. We will have developed a really robust network of universities, also other kinds of partners in the nonprofit and public sectors that have signed on to the mission and vision of the college and the Global Futures Laboratory, so that we're working together at scale and at global levels to move the needles in ways that we talked about beforehand. And that we will be recognized, I think as we are now, as a thought leader in this space, but also translating those thoughts into practical implementation strategies. So not just talking about it, but actually getting things done.
I mean, there's so many issues in the spotlight now, from food security and public health to climate change, clean energy. How can this approach help make a difference in these types of big issues?
Yeah, so ASU is #1 in innovation, so I think we're a perfect breeding ground for developing these kinds of ideas. And often people look at these as problems. I don't think of them as problems. I think of them as places where we can be innovative to lead to solutions that they may be difficult in achieving those, but in the process of achieving those solutions to these challenges, I think we're going to learn a lot. We're going to develop new kinds of systems that are going to make life better. So we tend to focus a lot on that nature of problems, but really I look at it as there's an amazing opportunity for developing new solutions.
What role do you think the lab can play in helping with these complex issues and providing positive solutions?
Well, the laboratory is going to be one of many partners. ASU is a big place, but there's no way that ASU alone is going to solve climate change or more secure food systems. But as a large research university with the commitment that it has to build a better future for everyone. So we've got the commitment there, and we do have a lot of brain power. It's really going to depend on our ability to convince and persuade others nationally and around the world that this is worth joining, and that coming together we can start to really move the needle.
This is a really complex thing that you're talking about. It also has never been done before. But you've had some experience putting together complex things that have never been done before. Help me, give me an example.
So when we created the School of Sustainability and the Julie Ann Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability, that caused a lot of confusion, but also a lot of skepticism. So many people thought that sustainability was a buzzword, that students wouldn't be able to get jobs, that it was really just a fad and it would eventually go away. I mean, I literally heard from people, both here at ASU and elsewhere, that it wasn't going to last. But what we were able to do was, of course, one, persevere and demonstrate the value of thinking about sustainability as a concept and idea that wasn't just an intellectual exercise, but was really an important part of strategies at universities, in the private sector, and also in the public and nonprofit sectors. And when we started the School of Sustainability, it was a very lonely club. We were the only school of sustainability in the United States. Now there's more than 1,200. And I would say about 1,199 of those came to ASU to figure out how we did what we did. So we blazed the trail, and what's really gratifying is that we now have these other 1,200 partners that we can work with collectively to start to make a difference towards building that sustainable future that we all want. So I'm convinced that we'll be able to do the same thing with the Global Futures Laboratory and the College of Global Futures. We will tell our story. We might have to tell it more than once, tell it over and over, work with a set of willing partners, and eventually we will create a network of organizations that have the same mission and vision and purpose of what we're doing within the College of Global Futures and the Global Futures Laboratory.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me on Devils in the Details today. Chris Boone, who's the Dean of the College of Global Futures, and talking today about the Global Futures Lab, the first of its kind, but probably not the first forever. Thanks for joining me.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.